Writing the intro to this video has been an absolute mess, let me tell you. Here I am on the 4th rewrite of this paragraph, and it probably won't be the last either. Okay, so that was terrible. So here I am on the 5th rewrite, and I still don't really know how to introduce this video without it also sounding completely redundant. The topic is classic games that received terrible ports, as you could probably tell by the title of the video, which is completely self-describing, both for the video and my entire channel. I mean, how else could you really describe half the stuff I play on here? So really, there isn't much for me to introduce here per se, and... sod it, that will do. Not doing this a 6th time. Welcome to Port Patrol, the show where we look at weird and interesting ports and spin-offs of our favourite games, and today we are taking a look at classic video games that received terrible ports. Oh, and they're also all Game Boy games. I didn't set out with that in mind, but it kinda just ended up that way. Earthworm Jim was a popular game series for about 4 years in the 90s before it disappeared off the face of the planet. Developed by Shiny Entertainment and designed by Doug TenNapel, a very talented artist and animator who was a massive inspiration to me growing up, who now spends most of his time on the internet denying that COVID exists, harassing LGBTQ people, and being racist. Needless to say, the day I found his Twitter account was probably the worst day of my life. Earthworm Jim and Earthworm Jim 2 were both hugely successful titles, boasting beautiful smooth animations, a funny charming world to explore, and offering a unique take on the 2D platforming genre, which, while it may be hard as nails, turning off a lot of people to the series, well, maybe you all should have done what I did and played nothing but Earthworm Jim when you were 8 years old and had nothing better to do with your life and gotten really good at it. Yeah, didn't think of that, did you, Lucas? Now, Earthworm Jim is no stranger to handheld conversions. The GBA port of the first game was not very good, but gameplay-wise held up mostly intact. And the original Game Boy port completely puts that to shame, despite being immensely awkward to play because the game really needs 3 buttons, and the Game Boy only had 2. But basically what I'm trying to say is, by the time it came to port Earthworm Jim 2, there really was no excuse for it to turn out, well, like it did. So, bearing that in mind, Earthworm Jim 2 on the GBA is the worst game I have ever played in my entire life. There's an opening sentence for you. Developed by Super Empire. Yeah, I don't know, I tried looking them up, but all you get back is the Super Nintendo Star Wars game. Oh jeez, where do you even start with this game? Just by looking at it, you can probably tell what my first complaint is gonna be. It's actually impressive how poorly this game runs. Like, it's not just that the frame rate is bad, but the game speeds up and slows down even when you're doing nothing but moving across the screen. Like, it can't even hold steady when literally nothing is happening. The screen tears up something fierce as well, which I didn't even know was possible on the GBA, not in any strictly 2D games at least. I suppose if you're really scraping the bottom of the barrel for compliments, you could say that at least you can see more of the screen than you could in the first game. That's really all it has going for it though. Like, nothing made the transition across well here. The gameplay has been ruined, the graphics have bizarre colouring and stray pixels, the animation is mostly there, I guess, but even then the sprites are horribly misaligned for some animations, like moving across ropes, and sometimes the sprites just get squished. Like, why does he look like that? The music is like a Trojan horse. The first 2 songs of the game sound perfectly fine, and then, I don't know, maybe they just didn't expect anyone to get far enough into the game to hear the other songs, they just completely give up. Listen to the beautiful bagpipes in this song. Or perhaps the funky steel drums in this one. Or just the absolute mess that's going on here. It's all out of tune, offbeat, or both at the same time, which honestly just makes it even funnier that the first two songs are mostly okay. Like, I was just joking earlier when I said it felt like they didn't expect anyone to get past the first level, but like, why else would the first song be good and then the rest be terrible? It's like they genuinely just put all their effort up front and did not expect anyone to actually play the game. Well, unfortunately for Super Star Wars The Empire Strikes Back, I did. I played the entire game. And yeah, it's pretty terrible the entire way through. And all of this has been said without even considering how it actually feels to play. Oh my god, not good. It feels like ass, and not in a good way. Like, even if the game played at 60 FPS, it would still be a terrible port. The shoddy frame rate is just the nauseating crust that is one part of the entire mouldy loaf of bread. Now, I do have a list. So if you don't mind me, jumping kills absolutely all momentum. So when you jump, you stop moving for a bit before leaping forwards, and then when you land, you stop again for a second. Very unsatisfying. Using the whip is horrible because you have to hold down the button through the duration of the attack, otherwise the animation just stops and you don't do anything. Same with some of the weapons as well, like if the weapon has a charge up, you have to hold it the entire time. Also, whipping in midair again kills all momentum, great. All of the gimmicky levels in the game that aren't just straight up 2D platformers that I already hated in the actual good versions of Earthworm Jim 2 are still terrible. Not entirely the GBA version's fault, but you know, they're even worse versions of levels I already didn't like playing. Not a good look. Oh, and literally within the first 2 minutes of gameplay, I got myself stuck in a wall and had to reset. This clip right here basically sums up Earthworm Jim 2 on the GBA pretty well. The fact it's so consistently terrible actually makes the parts where the game shows some level of competence even more weirdly impressive, I guess. I don't know how to describe it. Like Lorenzen's Soil, a level with quite complex dirt physics, where you shoot at dirt built up on the ceiling to make it fall and form ramps for you to climb on. Fully expected it to not be here, but yeah, there it is. A very terrible version of it, but I'm surprised they even put in the effort. Earthworm Jim really did deserve better than what he got on the GBA. Well, actually, you could say that about his entire franchise, but especially on the Game Boy. I ragged on the game and its developer a lot here, but really there isn't much information on this game out there on the internet. I can't find any information about other games the developers made. I mean, hell, I can't even find who the developers are. So is it their fault? Or did Interplay rush them? We may never know. And honestly, that's fine, you know, who cares? Next game. The next game we are taking a look at is Sonic the Hedgehog, again for the GBA. Now some of you watching this who have been viewers of mine for way too long are probably like, wait a minute, this is starting to sound suspiciously like a video I made 6 years ago. To which I would reply, what video? So yeah, I was planning out this video and completely forgot that old one existed. Like, I'd written everything for Earthworm Jim 2, then moved on to Sonic the Hedgehog and was like, ah crap, this feels really familiar. But it's okay. It's 6 years old, it's terrible, no one watches it nowadays, and now no one ever will. So, I'm pretty sure I don't need to introduce Sonic the Hedgehog, right? Wow, yeah, spend 5 minutes introducing frickin' Earthworm Jim, and then when it comes to Sonic the Hedgehog, just don't bother at all. Geez, I wonder which of these two franchises I have the most attachment to. Though, let's be honest, I'm not wrong. I know what Sonic is, you know what Sonic is, and regardless of your opinion on whether or not Sonic is good or bad, which is as far as I am willing to dip my toes into that debate, which probably broadcasts exactly which opinion I have if I don't want to explicitly say it, we can all agree that Sonic the Hedgehog on the GBA is a terrible, terrible game. Sonic the Hedgehog for the GBA, also known as Sonic the Hedgehog Genesis, just to make things confusing, was released in 2006, exclusively in North America, as a celebration of this series' 15th anniversary. Which was nice of them, I guess. It was also the last Sonic game released on the GBA, making it all the more confusing that after the Sonic Advance series, they still managed to release this afterwards. And it's not like it's even just a random, obscure developer that Sega gave zero budget to make this with. Sonic Team made it. Like, your job is to make Sonic games. It's in the name. What, was the rest of the team too busy making Sonic 06? Starting to think 2006 was not their year. Now, the very first indication that something terrible happened during the creation of this game is the music. At least Earthworm Jim tried to pretend that its music was good to begin with. Sonic just hits you with the bare, naked truth right from the title screen. It's like, not only did they pick the worst, most grating instruments, I guess? Beeping's an instrument, right? Again, it's not even in tune half the time. And the sound effects have been equally ruined. So unsalvageable that you can literally hear they had to use a low quality recording of the ring sound effect when you get hit, presumably just because they could not make it sound right any other way. I was really hoping to find some juicy tidbits online about this game's development, or like fun quirks about the game, but honestly there isn't a lot out there. Really, it's just different variations of the sentence, it's terrible and no one liked it. And clearly the people writing these wiki pages were also really scraping the bottom of the barrel for things to say about this game. So this probably won't come as a surprise to you, but the gameplay has been equally ruined. I know I said earlier in this video that Earthworm Jim 2 on the GBA is the worst game I've ever played, but this is really making me regret that because it's really close. To a degree, they did try to improve the original title, the new anniversary mode adding the spin dash from Sonic 2, so that's nice. But the game just does not control well. I mean, it controls fine, you know, you press jump and Sonic jumps, it's responsive enough, I guess. But the gameplay that you are in control of is just not good. I can't tell if Sonic's physics are just bad, or if the terrible frame rate is making the physics feel way worse than they actually are. Let's face it, it's probably both. But controlling Sonic is like trying to get a handle on a wet bar of soap in the shower. Oh, there he goes again. Zoom zoom. Not helping the game is the fact that none of the sprites have been scaled down, so you can barely see anything. Honestly, the game could run perfectly, and the camera would still render the game virtually unplayable. Enemies that were once placed in fair and easy to account for positions, now that the screen has been zoomed in, become completely invisible to you until it's too late. Some platforms you need to land on are barely just about holding on for dear life to stay on the screen. Obstacles are always just waiting off screen to ambush you when you least expect it, and, well, best of luck figuring out where to go in the special stage is all I'm gonna say there. Perhaps if you are really, really familiar with Sonic 1, you might be able to get through this game. But I am not that. I'm probably more familiar with the Master System version of Sonic 1 than I am the Mega Drive version because, you know, weird ports and all that. I played the game for 40 minutes, and 30 of them were spent in Marble Zone, and God knows I tried my very best to get through it. But I am not that strong a person. I will gladly throw in the towel, and the fact that I never finished Sonic the Hedgehog Genesis for the Game Boy Advance is just a fact I'm going to have to live with for the rest of my life. Oh well. I can't think of a game that was as instantly and completely made outdated as Wolfenstein 3D was. Released in May 1992, it sent shockwaves through the game industry, practically kickstarting the first-person shooter genre, spawning more clones and rip-offs than you could shake a stick at, whatever that means. And then a year and a half later, Doom came out. I don't think I need to expand on that. That isn't to say Wolfenstein 3D is terrible or anything. I played it for the first time for this video, and beat the first 3 episodes in a single sitting. It may be incredibly basic nowadays, but it's still a blast to play. Despite it and Doom being so similar, the higher damage output of enemies in Wolfenstein, and the fact like 90% of them are hit scanners, means you actually play it very differently. Creeping your way carefully around corners like you're genuinely skulking around a secret Nazi base, and I mean, come on. Any game where the last boss is Hitler in a mech suit, being guarded by floating vampire Hitlers, who, after you kill him, the game says, "Let's see that again," and shows you an action replay of Hitler melting into goo, and then you stand over him and say, "Heh, see Kyle," more like, "See Hell." Come on, it's impossible to hate. The biggest flaw the game has is that all the levels are literal mazes, where every room looks exactly the same, and there's no map. But realistically, if you're playing the game nowadays, why wouldn't you be playing one of the modern source ports that adds an auto map? Still doesn't make the levels any less confusing at times, but at least you won't spend 20 minutes running around in a circle without even realising. So I went on a bit of a tangent there. You can probably tell I'm really excited to be talking about anything again after a year of not writing scripts, as if this video needs to be any longer at this point. But basically, going back 5 minutes to the point of this paragraph, Doom and Doom 2 both received ports to the GBA, and, while flawed, were still enjoyable experiences. So one would expect that when Wolfenstein 3D received a GBA port, being the much simpler predecessor to Doom, that it would have been even better. Well, if you are thinking that, then you must have not been paying attention to this video or the topic it's about. If that's because of my 5-minute tangent about Hitler, my bad, because Wolfenstein 3D on the GBA is a little bit stinky. Developed by Stalker Entertainment in 2002, a year after Doom came out on the GBA, Wolfenstein 3D was the only game Stalker ever released before shutting their doors in 2003. Though using a plural they feels a bit weird there, as looking at the credit screen of this game, not that I finished the game, I left it on the title screen and went to make a cup of tea, and the credits were there when I got back, shows us that 2 people made this game, with one person being the programmer and the other being the biz. Whatever that is. So basically, a game programmed by one person. Not gonna lie, really wish I didn't see that before hopping into this game, because it makes ragging on it feel so much meaner. Though I will say to their credit, the game they ported here is at the very least on par to the others I covered in this video, and those were made by teams of people. I went back and checked. But sadly, I guess there is only so much one person can do, so let's not beat around the bush anymore. The first thing that immediately lets you know that something is up with this game is the music. Hey, who left this broken record player here? I do not have the talking style to pull off a joke like that. Can we just appreciate the idea of the joke rather than the actual execution? Because I thought it was pretty good until I tried to speak it out loud. Bucking the trend of the previous ports, Wolfenstein sidesteps the issue of having terrible music by deciding to just have none instead. Well, okay, I say none because there's none in-game, but there are actually music files in the game's data. They just aren't programmed to play anywhere in the game, and yeah, that was probably for the best. Aside from the music though, everything else is here. From the original release at least. You won't find any of the improvements made from the Mac or Super Nintendo versions here. This is just a conversion of the MS-DOS original. All 6 episodes, all the weapons, all the enemies, and all the levels. It's just a shame it was all bundled together into a release that is nigh on unplayable. Unlike Earthworm Jim and Sonic, where the frame rate is constantly dropping, Wolfenstein's is actually quite stable. It's just a shame that the frame rate it targets is about as low as the very worst of those games' drops. Less of a frame drop and more of a frame plateau, if you will. The game is really sluggish and unresponsive, and not helping things is the fact that basically every other frame, there's a nice, fat, juicy tear right in the middle of your vision. Screen tearing in 2D GBA games was rare. Like I said, Earthworm Jim 2 is like the only time I've ever noticed it. 3D screen tears are a bit more common, but I've never, ever seen a game tear up this much before in my life, let alone just on the GBA. Mixed with the low frame rate, and I honestly found the experience disorientating in a weird way. Like I just could not get a good feel for where I was in the game, making the already maze-like labyrinthian levels even more confusing to navigate. And when the frame rate is this poor, the gameplay cannot escape it. Bearing in mind this is coming from someone who said Doom for the Super Nintendo is actually really good and playable when it looks like this. But at least the controls in Super Doom were somewhat responsive. In Wolfenstein, it feels like half the time my button presses aren't even being registered. I'll struggle to pick up items, I'll get stuck on props, even when it looks like I should be able to get past them. I'll just stare blankly at a wall because I tried to turn right and the game said no, and the game is still just as difficult as it was on PC, which I still found hard on a keyboard and mouse. Imagine it like this. After leaving any room, it's like a 50-50 gamble on which direction I should check first, and you better get on your knees and pray to God that the direction you picked is the one with all the enemies. Otherwise, there's basically no time to turn around without taking several shots to the back. And this is the game where one shot can take off well over half your health. Hell, even if you are facing the right way, there's the chance you'll overshoot, at which point the game will conveniently just ignore that you're pressing the shoulder buttons in a vain attempt to turn to face the enemy, and you'll get shot anyway. Honestly, by the end of my playtime on this game, I ended up just preemptively shooting whenever I went round a corner. That really felt like the safest bet. I really wanted to try and beat at least one episode of the game, just to say I could, but I kept getting lost towards the end of episode 1 because there's no map, and I died, which puts you back to the start of the level, and I really just could not be arsed. You get to save at the end of every level, so at least you don't have to pistol start it, but with the size of some of these maps, not being able to save mid-level would be an absolute killer in later episodes. And I mean, what am I saying? It's a killer here too. Everything about the game is a killer. There's no reason to play it. There are better first-person shooters on the GBA, there are better ways to play Wolfenstein 3D. And even if you are in the very particular niche market of wanting to play Wolfenstein 3D on a Nintendo console, that's right, I'm looking out for you, you very niche market, then the far superior Super Nintendo version also exists. A better frame rate is automatically a given, but it also features new weapons, remixed levels, music, an auto map, isn't that nice? And while this isn't an objective improvement, but definitely a plus to me, with the removal of any Nazi references in the game, it's amusing watching how they have to try and wiggle their way around any and all mentions of the Nazis when killing Nazis is the entire point of Wolfenstein. All the soldiers yell at you in English, and they have a particular fondness for this nondescript, clean-shaven man. I wonder who that could be. And if anything, it just shows a massive missed opportunity when it came to the GBA version. There was already an improved version of Wolfenstein on a Nintendo console. It seems like a massive waste for the GBA version not to feature any of the improvements made to the game, instead sticking with the very first version. Though maybe I am asking a lot for a port made by one person. Well, two if you count the biz. And let's face it, if it still played like this, then those improvements wouldn't have stood for much anyway. It's a shame that Wolfenstein 3D didn't get the port it deserved to the GBA. Heck, it's a shame that none of these games did. But it's also a bit hard to be too sad about it. Sitting here smugly 20 years on, with ways of playing all of these games now portably that far exceed even the hypothetical bests these GBA ports could have been. Apart from Earthworm Jim 2, the GBA version is still the most recent port it received. Now that's depressing. Anyway, because I know you're all just so interested and excited to know where I would where I would rank these games from best to worst. What I'm gonna do is just take all these games and just neatly tuck them away down here. That should do it. Hi everyone, Lexx here, I guess. Thank you for watching the video. I hope it was worth the wait. So this is just a sort of little unscripted part to sort of go over what's been going on and future stuff for the channel, things like that. Normally I'd put this update at the start of the video, but you never know when YouTube is just going to randomly pump 300,000 people to your video with the long bit explaining stuff about the channel at the beginning, and then your notification box for the next 2 weeks is just, oh, why is this intro so long? Why are you talking about being so sad? Where's the video? So yeah, I've learnt my lesson. From now on, I'll keep all that stuff to the end, where most likely the people it's actually directed to will see it most, or like only the people who care most about it will see it. So yeah, channel rebrand. It's not gonna mean like a change in how I make videos or anything. Really, it was just sort of like, I think part of the reason I felt so burnt out about making videos is, I guess, part of the brand. Like, I'd been using the name Fracky for so many years now. I just really wanted to freshen up, I guess, make something that feels a bit more me. So I decided on Lexx, because, you know, you can't really get more me than your actual name, and it leaves room for cute little puns like Lexx Play and stuff like that in the future if I ever decide to use that pun for anything. Maybe just normal reviews of games that aren't ports. We'll see. So massive thank you to @LordRegretti on Twitter. Not only for just being massively supportive and like such a good friend the past year, but also for all the work he did on this channel rebrand, designing the funny little character you can see down there, letting me animate them, and also the fun little box art you saw pop up in the video earlier. All really good stuff. Go follow him, he's a really good artist. So let me know what you think of the rebrand. It's all a bit work in progress right now, but I knew that if I tried to spend as long as I wanted to making it perfect, then this video would have never come out. But let me know what you think. I really quite like it. I think it's cute. So yeah, as for the future of the channel, I'm not gonna make any promises right now, because I've learned enough times in the past that whenever I make them, I inevitably mess them up, but I am feeling more positive. I think this rebrand has given me a lot of momentum, and I have a lot of ideas floating around my head for future video ideas, even stuff outside of regular Port Patrol, like game reviews and stuff like that, but, you know, not just typical game reviews, but interesting and weird games, kind of fitting the Port Patrol idea, but, you know, not necessarily being ports. And I think this is the most excited I've been about my channel and making videos in well over a year. So while I'm not going to promise super duper frequent uploads or anything like that, I think you can definitely expect more videos from me in the coming year. And yeah, that's really all I want to say. As always, a massive thank you to my patrons who are scrolling across the screen right now. Thank you for being so patient with me, especially because I just kept forgetting to make updates on that. Gonna try and be a bit better with that in the future, now that there's actually gonna be stuff to talk about. And yeah, keep an eye out on the channel and my Twitter account, and yeah, expect the rebrand to slowly roll out across those as well. Thank you so much for watching. I really mean it. And I'm really excited to be making videos again. Thank you. And hopefully next time it won't be so long. So, I guess this is Lexx, and I'll see you next time.